Hello, is this UEFA?
Yeah,
Great, it's the Völsungur manager Shaun here.
yeah,
I just saw the playoff draw for the Champions League and I noticed that we're not in it. Is that supposed to be the case?
yeah,
It is.
yeah.
Then where are we actually entering the Champions League this season? Is it the group stage or something?
Yeah,
The group stage.
yeah,
Are you sure?
yeah.
Because we're supposed to be 11th on the coefficient table. We're not supposed to have an automatic group stage spot yet, are we?
Yeah,
So then why are we in the group stage?
yeah.
Say what?
What?
Got ya. So, look, I don't mind it, but I would really appreciate the coefficient points. Look, I've just got youth intake come through, and oh my god, we've got the next Chris Wood. I've got to leave you. I've got to leave you now. Sorry. Okay, bye. Youth staff, we've got the next Chris Wood. Hoo-hoo! Hello everyone and welcome to episode number 158 of Husavik Heroes here on Shaun Does FM. I hope you are doing well, and coming up in today's episode we've got our youth intake for this season. As you can see on screen, we'll play a game in the league against KA because somehow we've already actually qualified for the Champions League this season. We'll do an update on how the other Icelandic teams are getting on in the other UEFA competitions and earlier rounds of qualifying for those competitions and see exactly where they do end up. And at the end of today's episode, we will have the Champions League draw for the group stage, and we'll see which groups the other Icelandic teams do get if they make it that far. And before all that as well, we're going to do our squad run through before we crack into the group stages of the Champions League in tomorrow's episode, as well as some more transfers that we have done off the back of our last episode late last week. So it could be a long one, this one. If you are looking forward to it, then do remember to go down below, leave a thumbs up on the video, and if you haven't done so already and are enjoying this series here on the channel, also remember to hit that subscribe button and turn that notification bell on as well. It is greatly appreciated. But first things first, we have got our youth intake for Völsungur here in 2034. Very, very exciting one. We've got two players with 3.5 star potentials. That does mean this intake a little bit more promising than most that we have had so far in this save, especially when you consider the quality of the squad that we do have here at Völsungur these days. And I am very, very excited because I think we've got the next Chris Wood here at Völsungur. We've got a New Zealander with 1 star current ability, 3.5 star potential, and that is Fran Godbold. Unfortunately, not my son in game. That would have been quite nice, even though that would mean I'm doing something a little bit dodgy in game on the side. But anyway, we do have a New Zealander in this year's youth intake. He's a midfielder, come left winger, come striker. 1.85 meters tall. He's the next Chris Wood. We're going to train him as a box-to-box midfielder, but seeing as he can play up front and is quite tall, I have high hopes for this guy, and at the very least, he should end up being a key player for the New Zealand national team. But he is definitely one of the players we are going to sign out of this year's youth intake. And for those who are interested, he was born in Eltham, which I did actually have to check where that was, and I might have pronounced that wrong anyway. It's in South Taranaki, so he's probably good at surfing and being a bogan as well as football. Hopefully we can make him very, very good at football here at Völsungur. The one slight concern with him, he currently is a foreign player, being from New Zealand and with English nationality, but he's already completed a fair chunk of time towards becoming Icelandic as well. So hopefully by the time he comes into the first team in a few years' time, he will already have that EU citizenship, which would make things a lot easier for us having to try and fit him in here at the club. But a New Zealand Nugent, and a player who could actually end up being a star player for the New Zealand national team in a few years' time there. And Fran Godbold, the other good player who's come for our youth intake this year, is Burkhard Barkasson. He is a winger come striker, and he as well has that 1 star current ability and 3.5 star potential. So two decent prospects coming through our youth intake this season, as I said, especially when you consider the strength of our squad these days at Völsungur at this stage of the save. There's a few 3-star potential players as well who will probably sign. The first of those is a goalkeeper in Sigurd Sveinsson. He has 1 star current ability, 3-star potential. If we can get him up to that 3-star potential, that would be quite useful, having a homegrown club and nation goalkeeper who can do a job for us when required. So hopefully he will fit the bill for us in a couple of years' time in this save. And the other player we're probably going to sign out of this year's youth intake is Kali Porvardsson. and he again is a midfielder, 1-star current ability and 3-star potential. So this looks like it could be one of the better youth intakes we have had so far in this save. Very excited to see a New Zealand new gen in there and with 3.5-star potential. But that's the highlights of this year's youth intake, and we'll go forward a little bit now, travel forward in time and do a quick domestic recap before we have a look at how the other Icelandic teams have been getting on in the UEFA qualifying so far. And we've gone forward a few weeks off the back of that youth intake prior to the game that we are going to play in today's episode, around about when that Champions League playoff would normally be, seeing as we've somehow already qualified for the group stages, even though we didn't actually win the Champions League last season and shouldn't be getting an automatic group spot yet. But nonetheless, we are in the group stages of the Champions League. So what we can do in today's episode is our squad overview, a bit of a domestic recap, as well as recap some of the transfers that we have made since the end of last week. And we did leave things at the end of last week, right before that game against Phil here on the 19th of July. If you missed that last episode at the end of last week, I'll leave a link to that in the top right corner. But as you can see on screen, we've won all of our games since then, so that keeps things nice and simple. One close result there away at Breidablik, but apart from that, the rest of the games have been pretty comfortable through to yet another Icelandic Cup semi-final, taking on Hafnarfjordur not too long off the back of the game, which we are going to play in today's episode. But what that means for the league going into this one, we are on top and have already guaranteed Conference League football for next season. But I think if we win this next game, we might even guarantee Champions League qualification for next season. That could mean that we could actually get a transfer budget in today's episode as well. I'm hoping that's going to be quite a good transfer budget with what we have in the bank left over at the moment here at Völsungur. But we are taking on a KA team who actually find themselves in a little bit of trouble down in ninth, despite the fact that they have been involved in some European qualification this season already. But it should be a game that we are capable of winning in and around, seeing how the other Icelandic teams are getting on in their qualifying campaigns for the UEFA competitions, and that is where we will go to next. And we are going to work top down for this. So we'll check in on HK in the Champions League qualifiers first, but just confirming when we go over to the teams part of the overview, there it is, Völsungur first stage, group stage. So I'm not too sure exactly how that's happened. If we actually go and have a look at the Europe coefficients for this season, we are 11th. We should actually rise to 10th, hopefully, at the end of the season, because Austria getting rid of a quite good season. We're getting rid of some of our worst seasons so far in this 5-year block over the next two. That's a 5.7 and a 5.6. So I'm hopeful over the next couple of seasons, as long as we can keep performing like we have over the last couple of seasons in the Champions League, we can really establish ourselves in that top 10 and actually get the automatic group spot that we deserve, being in that top 10. And just to absolutely confirm, we shouldn't have an automatic group spot. If we go over to the qualification spots, 11th only gets you through to a Champions Path playoff. So I'm not too sure exactly what's happened there, but nonetheless, we are through to the group stages, even though we lost the Champions League final last season. So something's gone wrong in game, but we will take it. We probably would have won a playoff anyway, so I don't think it's going to have too much of an impact. But back to the stages now for the Champions League, and we will check in on how HK have been getting on since they entered in the third qualifying round. And they did a good job in that third qualifying round. They bet Ali out of Greece 4-1 on aggregate. That was off the back of 2 wins. So good stuff there from HK. That means that they are in a playoff. So at the very least, they're going to end up in the Europa League just like they did last season, albeit we are actually halfway through that playoff at the moment. HK have a 1-0 lead after the first leg at home. So we've actually got a chance that we could, for the second time so far in this save, have both us and HK in the group stages of the Champions League. So that's looking good so far in the top end of UEFA qualifying. And then we make our way down to the Europa League to see how Phil Kier are getting on. They had to wait all the way up until the playoff to actually enter this stage of the Europa League qualifying. So again, at the very least, they're going to find themselves in the group stages of the Conference League. So that's already 3 teams from Iceland guaranteed for European football this season, the most that we've had so far in this save. And they are also still in with a shout there of making the group stages of that Europa League. That's off the back of a 1-1 draw against Serbian outfit Proletar Novi Sad. And that second leg is going to be back in Iceland as well. So Phil Kier could also be making their way through to the competition where they did start their qualifying journey in. And to round things off, we make our way down to the Conference League. We have to go back a little bit further for this one because we had teams entering in the second and third qualifying rounds. The first of those was Nats KR. They just got the job done against Tirana out of Albania in that one on penalties after it finished 4-4 on aggregates. That did mean that we had both Nuts KR and KA making their way through to the third qualifying round for that Conference League, where unfortunately both of those teams actually had quite tough draws and they didn't quite make their way through to the fourth qualifying round. So it's guaranteed we're going to have 3 teams in the group stages of Europe this season. It just depends exactly what competition 2 of those teams do end up. And as you can see on screen there towards the top, KA got beaten 2-0 on aggregate by Dynamo Kiev. That is off the back of 2 1-0 defeats, which isn't too bad against the team which are quite regularly in Europe. And down just a little bit further, Nuts KR, they actually kept things quite close there against Basel. It was locked up at the end of the first league, but in the second league, Basel picked up a 3-1 win, and that means that they go through 4-2 on aggregate. So both of the Nuts teams there doing a decent job in Conference League qualifying in the end. As I said, got pretty tough draws and certainly held their own there against 2 teams who you would have expected to be beating them anyway. But that does mean that we have got Philcare and HK joining us in the group stages of Europe this season. It just depends on how the results from those second legs do go to see what competition they do end up in, whether it's HK in the Champions League or the Europa League, or whether it's Philcare in the Europa League or the Conference League. So that's what it looks like in terms of European qualifying for the Icelandic teams for the 2034-35 season. Next up, we've done some transfers off the back of the end of last week that we need to run through quickly before we do our squad overview leading into this Champions League season. And here is what we have done since then. As you can see on screen, we haven't actually loaned any players like we thought we might have to, and then we just found a way to do enough to get enough money into the transfer budget where we could buy some players. 2 out of the 3 players we were after in their positions we signed as well. So it's ended up being a pretty good transfer window for us here at Völsungur, just rounding off a few outs that we did have off the back of letting go of Chaka Traore at the end of last week. Kenny Boreal in the end, he had a couple of clubs who were after him for £16.5 million. He chose to go to Inter Milan. That deal was about $8 million up front, with the rest coming in installments, but he was a good solid left back for us. But with that young talent we do have coming through, the likes of Louis Herrera and Premsel Bokic, I thought we'd let go of him and try and give those young guys some more game time, and he goes to Inter Milan, as I said, for £16.5 million overall, even though we don't see that money straight away. We signed him back in 2031 for £7.5 million, so a good profit there, even though he is valued quite a bit higher now that he has gone to a top 5 league in Serie A. So Kenny Boreal is a Völsungur player no more, and the same applies for Karel Giroux. I think we've done a really good bit of business here, getting £20 million for a backup midfielder. We've replaced him with a more younger, promising player, and I think that's going to end up being a very good bit of business. It was a very solid backup box-to-box midfielder for us over the last few seasons. Was the Czech midfielder. We signed him back in 2030 for £4.8 million, so we've made a 4 times profit on that deal there for Karel Giroux. I think they've overpaid for him quite a bit there, have Valencia, and hopefully we've done good business with that money that we did get out of that deal to future-proof this squad quite nicely. So those are the 2 players that have left us permanently. We've also loaned out a few players, one which we have actually signed since the end of the last episode. The first player that we did sign on a permanent to join us here at Völsungur for this upcoming season, that is Bruno Costa. He is the replacement for Karel Giroux. We spent £7.5 million on him, rising to £10.75 million. I thought we'd actually have to spend somewhere around the £20 million mark for him, so quite happy that that was the price that Braga did want for him. That meant we actually did have enough money to sign Richard Wasawa above him. That meant that we didn't have to do any loans like we were planning to, but that's what he looks like. He looks like a very promising midfielder there coming out of Braga. Bruno Costa, only 18 years old, 2-star current ability, potentially has the 5 stars of that potential, albeit only 4 of those are gold. Already has a couple of nice green attributes, especially technically. When we compared him to Karel Giroux before I signed him, he's actually a better player technically. It's just the other areas that let him down slightly, but considering his age, he looks like a very, very promising prospect. Does Bruno Costa, and we get him after he started his career off fairly well at Braga. He will be our backup box-to-box midfielder for us here at Völsungur. And the other player that we did sign was a centre-back. This is a player who came on my radar when we signed Alain Basicki out of Genk around about this time last season. This is a centre-back partner, and that is Richard Wasawa. Good, solid centre-back, 2-star current ability, but yet again has that 5-star potential. So hopefully he can fulfill that, and that means we have a ready-made replacement when someone like Ali Ramadan does start to decline, being the eldest of our centre-backs these days. Already has 2 Belgian international caps, so he could potentially have a little bit of a centre-back partnership there alongside our other Belgian international centre-back in Filippo Donelli. We spent quite a bit of money on this transfer, £35.5 million. I think about 20 million of that was up front, and the rest of it is going to be in installments. But with that potential, I think he is a great get for us, and hopefully he's going to be our next starting centre-back, as I said, once someone like Ali Ramadan does start to decline. But that just adds some good depth for us at centre-back, and especially being a EU player as well. So those are the transfers that we have made. Another transfer we did make, in fact, was Ousmane Diop. We got him out of Senegal, 18-year-old who has decent potential. He didn't cost too much. That's why we took a gamble on him, as you can see, now valued between 3.7 and 5.2 million pounds, 1.5 star current ability, 3.5 star potential for this left winger come striker, and we only had to spend £20,000 on him, so that could be a deal which ends up being a nice little cash boost here for the club, even if he doesn't quite cut first grade here at Völsungur, which is probably going to be the case considering that he is a foreign player. But I thought, like, with that price tag, he was worth a gamble, and we can hopefully turn him around into a profit should he not make the grade here at Völsungur. As I said, so that's our transfer business wrapped up for the transfer windows that do open here in Iceland for 2034, and that means that we do have our squad ready for Champions League football this season. And this is what it's probably going to look like going into Champions League games this season. We're going to have to make one change for this upcoming game because we have too many foreigners. That means that Louis Herrera will probably drop out for someone like Premzel Bokic, and then we'll just play Louis Herrera in the second rotation for domestic games. That's the only change that we do need to make here between our first choice domestic team and the team that are going to take part in the Champions League. So we'll work our way down here. First up, our new starting goalkeeper, the German international in Karl Vollen. He is rated 4-star current ability, 4.5-star potential. Looks a really, really top quality goalkeeper. Expecting big things out of him for this upcoming Champions League campaign after we signed him from Gladbach earlier this year. In defence, in front of him at right back, Radenko Krolo. This is one of the changes that we have made, getting rid of the likes of Levan Tam and Kenny Boreal. 2.5-star current ability, 5-star potential. He's improved since this time last season, and hopefully with some regular first team football will improve even more, especially with that football coming in the Champions League. At centre-back, Filippo Donelli at centre-back still. He's improved nicely since we signed him last year, as you can see by that progress graph there in the bottom right. 4-star current ability and potential for the Belgian international, and alongside him, yet again with the same rating, is going to be Ali Ramadan. Again, he's made some progress since this time last season as our club captain, and still isn't actually that old at 26 years old. So our centre-back partnership in the first team, exactly the same as it was this time last season, and that's the only bit of our defence which has been untouched, because Louis Herrera is going to be our starting left back, the Mexican international. 2.5-star current ability, 5-star potential, just like Radenko Krolo. Hopefully he can grow as well with that regular Champions League football. In the midfield, this is exactly the same as it was last season. Basaroge still there in the DM. Very good player, only 23 years old. He's been here for quite a while now, so you do forget he is still that young, but 4-star current ability and potential. And he can also fill in at centre-back as well, should we need someone to. In front of him, Lassana Doumbia as the box-to-box midfielder these days. 5-star current ability and potential. He's improved greatly since this time last season. A real world-class midfielder that we did pick up on the cheap from Mets a few seasons ago, and he is still only 23 years old as well, so it's definitely quite a young team we do still have here at Völsungur. Kalen Rakasan in the Mazzala, 27 years old. He's quite similar ability-wise to what he was last season. Might have just improved a little bit, but he is still a great player for us. Can be really useful as that attacking Mazzala. And then we go to the front three, which has changed just slightly. Nicholas Zimmerman still our starting right winger with 3.5-star current ability, and potential has improved a little bit since this time last season, and is these days an elite winger, getting some regular starts for the French national team. Out on the left-hand side, one of our new signings in Ognjen Mizkic, who we did sign out of Red Star for £5 million to replace Chaka Traore. 3-star current ability and potential. I have already seen that just rise briefly to 3.5 stars, so he looks like a good option for us. Looks a little bit more well-rounded than what Chaka Traore is, and hopefully he can do a good job for us there. Stepping in to the first team and up front is still Adam Saki, world-class striker who's improved a little bit since this time last season. So it's a team which should hopefully be able to take us quite close to winning the Champions League yet again, if not get us over the line. And then we make our way down now to the reserve players on the bench for the games. We're going to have Premzel Bokek. He's our backup left back who is going to start this next one against KA, being a EU player, 2-star current ability, 5-star potential, another really high potential wing back that we do have here at Völsungur. Our backup centre-back, as you saw before, was Richard Wasawa. Alain Basicki makes his way onto the bench with his 3-star current ability these days. Just a little bit too good to leave out compared to the other options, and he also has 5-star potential and has improved greatly since we signed him last season. So excited to see what he can do, making appearances off the bench for us this upcoming season. Then we make our way down to Jonata on the bench. He's just regressed slightly since this time last season. That might be why his potential has dropped down to 3 stars, but he is homegrown at club and in nation these days, so we do need to keep hold of him, and he is quite a reliable option should we get an injury to any of our front three on the bench, at least for this game. He doesn't need to be registered for the Champions League, so that does help as well. That's Narek Voskanyan, 2-star current ability, 5-star potential, very, very promising Armenian striker, who I did mention at the end of last week, could also occasionally play Mazzala for us should we need to. Alongside him on the bench, Fabio Mariano as the Mazzala, who can also play striker, so quite a similar player, 2.5-star current ability, and potential's regressed a little bit since this time last season, but again, is quite a good quality homegrown club and nation player for this Champions League squad. And the other player who was on the bench is Pedro Lemos as the backup right back, 2-star current ability, 3.5-star potential, so not quite as promising as those other wing backs that we do have at the club, but still not bad for a player who isn't too far away from being homegrown club and nation. Has made quite a bit of improvement, as you can see in the bottom right, since this time last season. And then we have the rest of the players in the squad. Not all of these guys are going to be registered for the Champions League. We probably won't be able to fit all of them in, but we've got the likes of Hans Voss, who is unfortunately currently out injured, but he's still 2.5-star current ability, 4-star potential, has improved quite a bit since this time last season, especially just prior to that injury. So hopefully he comes back again in good form for the backup team. Below him, we've got Bruno Costa, our new signing, who you did see before, to replace Karel Giroux. Frederick Larsson's probably going to need to be registered for the Champions League squad, despite the fact he's not getting much game time these days with his age, but being homegrown at club, we do need to keep him around despite that 2-star current ability and potential. The same does apply for the likes of Brynjar Galtason, who's also on that rating, quite similar to what he looked like this time last season. Another player like that would be Ian Carlo these days, our third choice right back, but we need to keep him around being homegrown club and in nation as well. The same applies for Porstein Arnason, who these days we're training as a box-to-box midfielder because we've got the likes of Mariano and Voskanyan who can play as a Mazalis. Arnason's probably our third choice box-to-box midfielder these days. Patrick Nygaard, another player who's just there to really fulfill those homegrown club and nation criteria for the Champions League. And Vartsdal is another player we might have to register because he's homegrown at club, a player who came through our youth intake quite a while ago, 1.5-star current ability, 3-star potential midfield option for us there as well, has improved just a little bit since this time last season. Not too sure if he's going to get a heap of game time, but if there's some injuries, he's probably going to be someone that we do use ahead of a Porstein Arnason because of that slightly higher potential. And in and around that, we have some quite promising players at the club, the likes of Agatigare, who we signed on this past transfer window on a free from Chelsea, very high potential. He's going to be our backup striker in the Champions League squad. We're just giving Voskanyan that spot so he gets some time off the bench domestically to try and fulfill that potential that he has. Another player with high potential is Tomohiro Horikawa, 3-star current ability, 4-star potential left winger. If I can fit him into the Champions League squad, I will, but we're going to give him a fair bit of game time in our backup team this season anyway. And you can see there, he's progressed quite nicely since this time last season. Alongside them, you've got the likes of Calvin Awosu, who's a fairly promising young striker who will give some game time to, again, off the bench in that backup team. And we've still got the likes of Will Lurvik at the club as a backup goalkeeper. Quite happy these days to be the goalkeeper in the domestic cup competitions. And Joachim Telemann is the only player who we haven't touched on. That's because we are looking to sell him. We are not going to use him because he is awful. So that's our squad run through leading into this upcoming Champions League campaign. As I said, not all of those players are going to be able to be registered in that Champions League squad. I don't think we're going to quite fit all of them in there, but we've certainly got some good young talent coming through, so we can start to get rid sooner rather than later, hopefully, of the likes of Galtason and Carlo, those players who these days are really clinging onto their spot because they are homegrown in club and in nation. But this is the team that we're going to put out for this game in today's episode against KAC, if we can guarantee that Champions League qualifying spot for next season, so we do get our transfer budget come later on. In today's episode, just that one change to our usual first choice 11, that is that Bokic will come in for Louis Herrera, but apart from that, this will be the team that does take part in the Champions League group stages. This season should be a game that we are definitely winning against the KA team who are struggling, and will come back shortly from KA's home ground and try to secure that Champions League spot for next season. And only a half minute into this game, we have the first highlight, a free kick here inside the opposition half. Nicholas Zimmerman holding the ball up here down the right-hand side. Lassana Doumbia makes his way into the box. He gets brought down, and it's a great early chance here for us to open the scoring from the penalty spot. And it is going to be Kalen Rakasan. He will slot this away in the right-hand corner. If only he did that in last season's Champions League final. But nonetheless, he picks up another goal this season, and we get off to an absolute flyer here in this league game, going a long way now to confirming Champions League football for next season. 1-0 up after only 1 minute. And we go forward now to the 9-minute mark for the next highlight of this one. Carl Vollen with a goal kick will kick that out to Radenko Krolo, and we start to get something going here down this right-hand side already inside the opposition half. Lassana Doumbia up to Adam Saki. Doumbia ball over the top here for Kalen Rakasan. Tight angle, will try and square this for Saki. Plays it into Zimmerman. Goes back to Radenko Krolo, and some good pressure here outside the box of K.A. Zimmerman. Flicks that back to Radenko Krolo right on the edge of the box. Puts this in there for Zimmerman. What can he do? We'll square this for Kalen Rakasan. It's deflected. It falls to Adam Saki. He puts that away in the bottom right corner. And after only 10 minutes, we are in a very good position here to be guaranteeing that Champions League qualification spot for next season. Some good sustained pressure, and we eventually get the ball to our striker in Adam Saki, albeit thanks to a big deflection there from a KA defender. And it's 2-0 Völsungur early on here in this league clash. And we go forward now to the 26-minute mark for our next highlight. Yet again, we look to go on the attack here against KA, just making our way now towards the halfway line, albeit slowly through Filippo Donelli. But now Lassana Doumbia starts to get us on the front foot a little bit more. Radenko Krolo plays the ball forward there. It's a terrible back pass from Nielsen, and Adam Saki will pick up a double thanks to an absolute gift there from the KA defence under absolutely no pressure there was Nielsen, but Adam Saki pounces and will make it 3-0 just shy of the half-hour mark. Zimmerman was putting a little bit of pressure on there, but certainly it was a bad pass, and Adam Saki makes the most of it, and we are now 3-0 up. And only 6 minutes off the back of that third goal, we're about to have a free kick here. Nicholas Zimmerman will try and put this top right corner, comes off the underside of the crossbar, and somehow we don't find the back of the net. After that is kept out. Some really good chances there for us to make it 4-0, but still 3 up with 10 minutes left in the first half. And that is half time in this one. We take a 3-0 lead into the sheds. We potentially should have got a fourth there about 10 minutes before half time, but very happy with how this is going. We'll make some changes throughout the second half, give some of those youngsters a bit of game time, but we have already gone a long way to securing Champions League qualification for next season. And only 3 minutes into the second half, we're going to make an early substitution here, not one that we were planning at making. Ognar Miskic has picked up an orange injury. We'll just play things safe. Jonata to come on for him for most of the second half. And we go forward to the 69-minute mark for our first proper highlight here of the second half off the back of that early substitution to Miskic. Hopefully that's nothing too serious and he'll be all right for Champions League football. But a good chance here for Adam Saki to complete his hat-trick. But that's a decent save there from the KA goalkeeper, and that will keep it at 3-0 with 20 minutes left. And just going forward a few minutes off the back of that previous highlight, we're going to make our last two substitutions now. We will bring on Pedro Lemos for Radenko Krolo, seeing as he's picked up a yellow card. And I think despite being on a hat-trick, we'll also take off Adam Saki. He's his chance now we'll bring on the Scanian to get some game time up front with just under 20 minutes left. And we've entered injury time in this game. Not much happening there in the second half, but we did the damage in the first, and we are going to pick up a 3-0 win. Some solid ratings there for the players who came off the bench, which is important for both Narekos Scanian and for Pedro Lemos. Hopefully that helps them grow just a little bit more towards that high potential that they do have. But a very solid performance there, kicked off with an early penalty to Kalen Rakasani and 2 more first half goals to Adam Saki, even if one of those was very, very much gifted to him by the KA defence, and that means that we pick up a 3-0 win, and that does also mean that we should be far enough now in front of Phil Kerr that we've guaranteed ourselves a Champions League qualification playoff spot for next season, unless of course we again end up in the group stages automatically for some strange reason. So we'll just go forward a little bit and see what our transfer budget is going into the transfer window at the start of next year. And before we can actually get to looking at those transfer budgets for the start of 2035, unfortunately, our injury to Ognjen Miskic is a little bit more serious than first feared. That twisted ankle means he's going to be out for 4 to 7 weeks, so he might at the very least miss that first game of the group stages of the Champions League. So it's quite an unfortunate one there. That probably means that Jonata is going to have to start for us in the first game of the group stages, and someone like Frederick Larsen might have to come onto the bench unless we can somehow find a way for Tomohiro Horikawa to be registered for the Champions League this season. But that does mean our new signing probably going to be missing for the first game of the group stages. That's a little bit unfortunate too, because he's actually started his career off here at Völsungur in quite good form, as you can see there through those stats. But we make our way up a little bit further, as you can see. That means that we have now qualified for Champions League qualification for next season, and that means that we do have our budgets coming up. We've got around about still £100 million in the bank, so I'd like to think this is going to be quite a good transfer budget, even though the board at the end of last week did cut down that transfer revenue retained to 40%, and indeed it's a very, very good transfer budget for the next window here at Völsungur. £48.2 million, and a wage budget going up to £900,000 a week. If we go over now to the transfer page, and you can see that means that we now have left over £340,000 of wage, so we can certainly increase that transfer budget if we need to as well. But that is a lot of money for us to play with for the next transfer window, which does open up around about February next season. So a big transfer budget. That should mean that if we need to, we probably don't, because we've got quite a young squad here at Völsungur these days, but if we need to, we can still improve. Maybe that means that we can actually get someone like Robson Fernando. If you're wondering why we couldn't quite sign him like we were planning to come the end of last week, that is because Man United actually wanted around £80 million from him. I didn't really feel comfortable having that as a mandatory future fee in a loan deal, so that's why we didn't get that deal over the line. I thought he'd be valued somewhere around the £40 million mark. Turns out Man United actually wanted £80 million for him, so that is why we are sticking with Ognjen Miskic as our first choice. Therefore, going into this Champions League season, maybe we can sign him with that money that we do have now going into the next transfer window. But Robson Fernando, we didn't quite have enough money to bring him to the club, and Man United we're not interested in a plain loan deal. But a big transfer budget for the next window here at Völsungur, albeit comes slightly at a cost with that injury to Ognjen Miskic. We'll go forward a little bit further now, and we'll get up to the Champions League draw and see whether HK will join us in the Champions League this season. And we've got forward to the Champions League group stage draw for 2034, having not had to play a single qualification game to get there. But before we do take part in this draw, we need to check in on what happened in the second leg of that playoff between HK and Tyrol, with HK having a 1-0 lead. And unfortunately, they have somewhat bottled it, have HK. They suffered a 2-0 defeat there in the second leg, albeit that was away from home. But that does mean that HK yet again are going to be in the Europa League for this upcoming season. So we'll check in on what group they do get down there off the back of our draw for this Champions League. Hopefully they get a much kinder draw than they had last season, where they did get what did look like a bit of a group of death. But that does mean it's just us in the Champions League this season, and we are about to take part in the group stage draw. We'll have a quick look at the pots. Pot 1, both the Manchester clubs along with PSG, Juventus, Inter Milan, Bayern Munich, Barcelona and Sporting out of Portugal. I think we just want to avoid the Manchester clubs after our last few seasons in the Champions League, but anyone else I'd be quite confident against at this point of the save. We are still in pot 2 alongside Real Madrid, Chelsea, AC Milan, Dortmund, Real Sociedad, Sevilla, and Lille. Down to pot 3. The teams that we could get out of this are Napoli, Hertha Berlin, Ajax, Partizan, RB Salzburg, Leicester, Benfica, or Dynamo Zagreb. And pot 4, the teams who we absolutely should be wiping the floor with, and they are Shakhtar, Ross County, Galatasaray, Cologne, Sochi, Tyrol, Ajaccio, and Estrela da Amadora out of Portugal. So that's an interesting team there in the group stages of the Champions League this season, but we'll just whiz through pot 1 and see which groups that we do want to avoid. And as long as we don't fall below Group F, I think we'll be fine, because otherwise we could be in a little bit of trouble with Man City and Man United being in the same group. That probably means that would make life a bit difficult for us trying to top our group. But I think we're pretty capable now of beating all those teams who are not from Manchester in that first pot. And we'll see which of these other groups that we do get now in pot 2. Sevilla, who will join Juventus in Group A, Chelsea alongside Inter in Group B, Dortmund alongside PSG in Group C, and we get Barcelona, who are the reigning La Liga champions. They did beat Real Madrid to the title last season. Of course, Real Madrid knocked us out in the semi-finals 3 years ago, so they might be quite a good team, Barcelona. But the last few times that we've played them, I think it's fair to say we have bottled it against them, and we definitely have a stronger team going into this group stage than when we last met them a few times in a row a few seasons ago. So that should be an interesting group against Barcelona, but hopefully we can still make our way through and hopefully do so on top of that group. Real Sociedad joins Sporting in Group E. That looks like quite a weak group at the moment. Lille will join Bayern in Group F. AC Milan will get Man City in Group G, and Real Madrid will get Man United in Group H. So whoever finishes second in that group is going to be someone which no one who was a pot 1 team going into that first knockout round draw is going to want. Now we make our way down to pot 3, Hertha Berlin Group A, RB Salzburg in Group B, Benfica in Group C. That means that Napoli, Ajax, Partizan, Leicester, and Dynamo Zagreb are left, and we get Ajax. It's a team that we've done pretty well against so far in this save, both in the Europa League and the Champions League group stages. So at the very least, we should be finishing second at worst in this group and reaching the first knockout round of the Champions League. But Leicester will join Group E. It is Napoli in Group F. It will be Dynamo Zagreb in Group G, and Partizan end up in that tough Group H, albeit Partizan have been a bit of a niggly team in the group stages of the Champions League recently, including beating Man City in their group last season. Of course, that's how we got them in that first knockout round. And down to pot 4, Ross County in Group A, Sochi in Group B, Galatasaray in Group C. We get Shakhtar out of Ukraine. Again, that's a team we have quite a good record against. So as I said, we should at least be finishing inside that top 2 in that group that we have found ourselves, and it will just depend on how we do get on against the Barcelona team. We don't have the best record against, albeit we have pushed them quite close at times so far in the group stages of the Champions League when we have played them, even though that was quite a few seasons ago. Cologne in Group E, Amadora out of Portugal in Group F. It is Tyrol in Group G. So I think in the end, HK probably better off in the Europa League instead of getting a group with Man City. And in Group H, that means that Ajaccio are going to join Man United, Real Madrid, and FK Partizan. So that's what the group draw does look like for the Champions League this season. We are alongside Barcelona, Ajax, and Shakhtar. I think we're going to get out of that group. It just depends whether we're going to get through it in top spot or in second spot. We'll go forward a few more days, check in on how Phil Kerr get on in the second leg of the Europa League playoff, and then check in on the Europa League draw, and maybe if we need to, the Conference League draw as well. And we've gone forward a few days off the back of that Champions League draw, and unfortunately, Phil Kerr have also managed to bottle things a little bit in the second leg of the Europa League playoff, albeit this time they lost theirs at home 2-0 against their Serbian opposition. So Phil Kerr also dropping down one from the competition, which playoff they are in. They are going to be in the group stages of the Conference League, but that's still not bad. We have 3 Icelandic teams in the group stages of UEFA competitions, and 1 in each of the UEFA competitions as well. So depending on which groups both HK and Phil Kerr get, they could actually do a little bit of damage potentially in those competitions, seeing as they did get quite close to reaching the Champions League and the Europa League respectively. But first things first, that means that HK have had their group draw for the Europa League. And these are what the groups for the Europa League this season do look like. HK yet to appear, but if we make our way down to Group E, you can just see it there right at the very top. They have got a group with Athletic Bilbao, Monaco, and Ari. Of course, Ari were the team who they did defeat to make that Champions League playoff, so they should at the very least be able to finish third in that group, and that would guarantee them a spot in the first knockout round of the Conference League. So I have high hopes there for HK to finish third in that group. If they somehow finish bottom, that is going to be very disappointing after they have already beaten one of those teams in their group this season in Champions League qualifying. So I think that's certainly a better group there for HK than what they had in the Europa League last season. And now we go down to the Conference League to check in on Phil here. Again, we have to go down to the bottom half of the draw. So if you're interested in what the groups do look like, just pause and have a quick flick through. But Phil here find themselves down in Group F, and that is alongside Podgorica of Montenegro, Nice of France, and AC Horsens out of Denmark. So Phil here might be in with a little bit of a chance of getting out of that group. Obviously, Nice are the team who should be finishing top of that group, but against the likes of a Montenegro team and Horsens out of Denmark, Phil here might not be without a chance of finishing second, also finding their way into that first knockout round of the Conference League. So I've got some slightly high hopes of what our other Icelandic teams can do this upcoming European season, considering the groups which they do find themselves in, even if that does mean that both of them might only have short runs in the knockouts of the Conference League. That would still be better than what any other Icelandic team has done so far alongside us in this save, but at the very least we've got 3 teams through to the group stages of UEFA competition for the first time, and it does look like they can at least pick up a win or two in the group stages of those competitions as well. But that will do it for today's episode. Hopefully it hasn't gone too long, although it probably has. We had a lot to cover off the back of our last episode late last week. If you did enjoy this one, then do remember to go down below, leave a thumbs up on the video, and if you haven't done so already and are enjoying the series here on the channel, also remember to hit that subscribe button and turn that notification bell on as well. Let me know where you think we're going to finish in our Champions League group. Just a quick reminder of what that group does look like. Barcelona, Ajax, and Shakhtar out of Ukraine. As I said, I think we should definitely finish in the top 2. It's just whether we can get the better of Barcelona to finish top of that group. And we'll come back for tomorrow's episode with a big first game in the group stage. It is from the Nou Camp. We take on Barcelona away. Any points in that game, and that gives us a massive chance of finishing top of that group as long as we can get the job done against those guys at home, which at this stage of the save, I think you would have to expect. And we will also hopefully have a Malka-Bikeren final off the back of that as well, as long as we get the job done over half Nafshador, which when you look at the league position, we should really be doing with those guys outside of a European spot. So tomorrow the plan will be Barcelona away up first, a massive game and potentially determining who will top that group, and also a Malka-Bikeren final. But until then, thank you very much for watching. Keep on keeping on, and I'll see you then. Cheers.